This is the Gallic Gaisatai, a unique warrior that gains combat strength against cities and stronger units. So I have to ask, can you conquer the world in Civilization 6 Deity with just the starting warrior? I can't build any other melee units, I have to conquer every civilization in the world, and if my warrior dies, the challenge is a failure. The Gallic people centralized around 4000 BC when a naked Skid Row resident convinced them he was chosen by the gods after overdosing on acid. That same trip convinced him he had to conquer the world with naked cavemen and nothing else. But first, they needed to find their victims, and off they went searching a brave new world. Their first contact was made with two independent cities that much preferred the book over the pen. So much so, Mr. Skid Row lost interest when they began babbling on the earth being round and washing hands to prevent disease. After continuing scouting efforts over the Great Plains, they finally found their mark. A Disney prince who turns out to be evil by the third act. With them successfully identifying their victims of mass extinction, they began assaulting their fortification. Well, not so fast. It is a consensus amongst top researchers that storming a settlement with half-naked trailer parkers is unwise. Doubly so when their cities are in a fortified position behind mountains and hilly terrain. So how do these hillbillies overcome such an obstacle? A 3-step training plan that starts with instilling discipline into the troops. Through brutal training. Hey, look at me. Titties are temporary. The glory of Freddie Mercury after a night in Amsterdam is forever. Their troops were now ready for some target practice to wean out the weak and create strong and capable veterans. And what better way than raiding defenseless villagers? But what's this? Sending the troops to engage in denazification by exterminating the entire population. And for step 3, use the requisitioned supplies and gold from the village to upgrade their sling throwers into capable archer corps. They now had everything they needed to launch their invasion. But there was a crippling problem. You see, the Germans were known for their technological prowess, and thus, there was a time limit before the Gallic army was entirely outclassed. But there's one thing technology can't buy the Germans, and that is a naked wrestler on steroids. And the wrestler was about to sodomize them.
What are you doing, step bro?
Domestic violence. The band of naked brothers blitzed Heidelberg while their forces were caught unprepared and would take a while to organize, and thus the city surrendered without much of a fight before the Gallic army performed what numerous experts call excessive violence, with the survivors taken into what numerous Southerners would call states' rights. It was around this time the frequent acid trips caused the crackhead with a state to ban abortion or whatever fertility rights means, right as his leading heroin addict began the siege of Munich. After a request to parley was met with the diplomats having their heads severed and used as crack pipes, they send in their vaunted army of scouts to relieve the defenders. Which is like attacking an aircraft carrier with a Nerf gun. With the capture of his capital, Ludwig fled eastwards as the army began cleanup duties in the west, expecting an easy job. However, it was a trap, and the Gallic army fell right into it. Munich hears the horn signaling the descent of thousands of naked German homosexuals, and on cue launch an uprising of their own, causing the warrior and archers to be caught in a two-front assault in what is now known as the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. Using the tactics of Ambiorix's previous rapist, they build 2 sets of walls before putting down the rebellion and marching west to slaughter the remnants of the German army. After such a decisive victory with calamity avoided, medals were in order, with special distinction being given to the Bukaki Choke Slammers, Gandalf's Big Naturals, and the Clam Crusaders. But most importantly of all, the highest honor was given to the Nibba Slayers. But it's not over yet. In fact, this isn't even the worst of it. The massacre of Frankfurt was yet to come. The city in an enviable defensive position, the last bastion for Ludwig, was advanced on and all was going well until the Huns arrived. The mobile barbarians caused mass panic amongst the Gallic forces caught in the midst of a two-front battle and with limited maneuverability. The Gallic army relied on blacking out the sun to defeat their stinky pursuers, but not without the complete annihilation of some of the greatest forces in the Gallic army. After that disaster, the military took control of the government, who were able to calm the masses and give the Gallic people their deserved Disney ending by putting Ludwig's head on a pike and once and for all proving ourselves the mitochondria, as we were the powerhouses in this cell. Despite such a massive success, the army was depleted, and with only one of 5 capitals taken, they were farther away than ever from their goal. It would require a massive rebuild of devastated lands, connection of the now vast empire, and acquisition of new victims, starting with discovering the secrets hidden in the north. Well, before we get into that, let's start with the settlement campaign, which was launched giving free land to anyone daring enough to settle the wilderness. All the while, rebuilding efforts were taken for the lands already under their control, as the vast technological knowledge of the Germans kickstarted what is now known as the First Gallic Golden Age, where the entire empire prospered while new knowledge on what lies past the northern mountains was unveiled. A crystalline rock formation that increased the effectiveness of the Nibba Slayers, which was just a touch of the riches awaiting us, but the real gold was not only the vast swaths of unclaimed, uninhabited land primed for colonization, but the friends we massacred along the way. But no good deed goes unanswered, as on their way home to discuss the new and exciting world, they came upon some unscrupulous, clothed swordsmen, fucking barbarian, who decided to perform pest control, wiping out some, forcing others to hide, as the Geisatai managed to escape. How, you might ask? Well, they picked up a few tricks from their previous experiences in the German War, allowing them to run really fast. But, you know, the northern barbarians aren't exactly what Ambiorix had in mind when the funny man said,
"You are Adolf Hitler."
Back when he nearly overdosed all those years ago. He was more so talking about the Dutch woman who's never had to pay a dime at Heart Attack Grill, along with a neurocompromised individual whose idea of a good time were the 2 drugs, methamphetamine and prepubescentine. Perhaps the average Civ Lifer subscriber, as these new world leaders came together to engage in various world peace initiatives through the newly founded World Congress. To show their love for democracy, the Gallic people established free trade and capitalism as a smokescreen for their more unethical plans. With no civilized nation to the east, this left the Gallic people free to massacre any native inhabitants and become masters of 2 whole continents, and the power that granted, along with German resources and slave labor, turned them into a superpower. However, the Gallic Golden Age was coming to an end, as this wealth and prosperity caused jealousy amongst some unforeseen predators. The man whose dating preferences match the minute section of a clock launches a surprise assault which almost overwhelms the Gallic responders, who were only able to keep the Greeks at bay by opening up 2 more fronts against the Greek menace with their allies. The advanced cavalry tactics proved troublesome, as they were almost able to penetrate the fortress at Magdeburg, almost leaving the fertile Gallic homeland open for pillage and conquest. But in their darkest hour, with all hope seeming lost, the strategically placed fortress blocked off the Greeks from their supply lines and reinforcements. This, along with completely walling off both warring sides after establishing an alliance with the Vatican, proved impenetrable. But as you are no doubt aware, it was the brave Nibba Slayers who dealt the killing blow. The elite engineers who began the successful defense were awarded with their place in the history books as the creators of the world's first Oppidum. A structure so magnificent, a Korean who looks too plump to be from Pyongyang arrived under the guise of helping to mediate a ceasefire, just to observe this marvelous fortress. A fortress that began a construction spree in the lands of Gauls after meeting the threat to their way of life head-on. New monuments were built to celebrate the occasion. The economic shock was rectified, and new research centers were constructed, as this era became known as the Second Gallic Golden Age. This Golden Age wasn't just about the prosperity of the Gallic civilization, however. It was more like an industrialization scheme to help them carry out their true motives. The Second Greco-Gallic War had begun. Despite their total air superiority and implementation of rapid-firing guns, the advance was far too slow for the crack addicts' liking. You see, through dominance, the empire had grown decadent, and after breaking the ceasefire, sanctions were placed on the already struggling nation, which, coupled with their outdated military doctrine of naked men with spears dealing the final blow, caused the Gallic people to enter their darkest age. Yes, unfortunately, we were at the stage of our life cycle where Viva La Vida plays during our introduction. With the periphery of the empire looking to rebel, the Greek defenses proving too formidable to overcome, the rapid destruction and subsequent slow replenishment of the special warrior, what can I say? The lights were brighter than expected.
They're too bright, turn them off!
With the war efforts having failed, the entire nation down in the dumps, medically speaking, and the great leader Ambiorix, realizing that this crusade wasn't going to be easy, this realization left him on the verge of giving up on this impossible mission. But he was determined. And with the plan on its last legs, there was only one thing that could save them in this dire time: the hydrogen bomb. The Manhattan Project took complete priority, and all sources of radioactive material were taken by this giant of a project. Infrastructure was literally falling apart, but there was no money to go around as everything was being swallowed by Ambiorix's gambit. One last chance to realize that mushroom-induced vision of mushrooms he saw thousands of years ago. And after launching a super Earth satellite to track everybody's movements, the accuracy was not going to be an issue. But with such large bodies of water surrounding the landmass, a stray submarine could potentially hit and eliminate the Geisatai, ruining his master plans. And so, a high seas fleet was constructed to escort the infantry. Finally, with all the planning done, it was time. With the first of no doubt many cities now in the hands of why I thought naked men with body tattoos were immune to radiation poisoning is beyond me. Alright, you want domination? I'll show you domination! Alright, let's vote. Anyone with a problem of me being master of the world, say aye. If you want to see me become master of the Mediterranean, check out this video where I restore the Roman Empire.